With a new season set to begin, Race Canada had the chance last week to sit down with DTM race winner Robert Wickens and talk about the upcoming 2015 season when he'll be driving the number 6 Mercedes AMG C63 DTM sedan and hopefully go for some more wins this year. How are you finding it? I mean, it was a huge transition for you, obviously. I mean, as it is, I suppose, for any driver, you know, when you've got so focused on open wheel, and then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're in a 2-ton sedan.
At least it's only 1 ton. But no, like, to be honest, before I did my first test, you know, I did my seat fit at Mercedes and all that stuff, and you know, it was kind of already a bit of a leap of faith. Because, you know, I had like an offer from a GP2 team and to be a reserve driver again for 2012, and basically Mercedes said, you know, we can offer you this, but you know, we need to lock in the terms before you test. And I was like, okay, so I had to effectively confirm to them before I even drove the car. So I remember doing my seat fit and everything before the first test in Barcelona. I did my first test with them, and I was just freaking myself out. I was like, I can't see my wheels. I can barely see over the steering wheel. You know, I was looking through this windscreen. I was like, this by this. And then as soon as I left the pit lane, it was just normal. It was just I was just driving around Barcelona. You know, it was just there's no difference between driving in an open wheel or not. You know, I was freaking out that I wasn't even in the center. You know, and then just it was completely normal. I was expecting to be hitting curbs on the right hand side because I didn't know where my right wheels were and stuff, but it was fine. So it wasn't that much of an adjustment, but I thought it was going to be a pretty big one.
So obviously you had a successful test and Mercedes decided to keep you on.
Yeah, it was just one of those days. I only had 1 day in the car, and I love Barcelona, so it was probably a bit lucky that it was at one of my favorite circuits. But I was competitive right away. On qualifying sims, I was actually quicker than the referenced experienced driver, so they didn't really have a choice but to sign me, I guess.
Obviously, I guess your first win came, was it at Nürburgring?
Nürburgring, yeah, 2013.
Which you'd had some success at before in open wheel.
Yep.
Do you think that made a difference to?
Yeah, I don't know why, but every driver just has tracks where, for some reason, it's easy for them to be fast. And furthermore, I mean, in 2011, I won the Renault 3.5 race there when I was still in my junior Formula Car stuff. And it was a wet, dry, you know, like me and Daniel Ricciardo stayed on dry tires, everyone else pit for wets, and then him and I were fighting for the lead on a wet track. And it was chaos, effectively, but the strategy worked because the track dried, and then him and I were like nearly a minute ahead of everybody else.
Right.
But then my first win at Nürburgring was exactly the same situation. On the grid, started raining, you know, stayed out on dries, actually pitted for wets, but just right at the right time, and the track dried out again. We went back on dry, so it was, you know, it started dry, went wet, and then dried again, and it's just funny looking back on it that it was the same track and the same conditions, effectively, you know, to get my first DTM win.
Yeah. And you've got 3 marks out on the track. Some have more success than others at different tracks, although Mercedes does seem to struggle. How do they react to an individual driver's success? Do you do a lot of sharing of information at that point to try and get the car faster?
Yeah, I mean, Mercedes' Achilles' heel in the past was the lack of communication in the team by the team principal who was in charge at the time. And after the first race last year, when we had a dismal start to the season, they released him of his duties, and now since then the company has taken a complete turn in HWA, where it's very open, it's a very family-driven atmosphere, you know. And the driver before, you know, my first 3 years in DTM, I couldn't tell you how much fuel I had in the car at any given point because that was like confidential information. Where now, you know, the driver knows everything about the car, and the driver actually has a big influence on how the car moves forward. Where before we were just tools that were driving it around, and that was effectively all we were good for. So now it's, you know, everyone's, I think, really motivated to see how the start of the season goes, because over the whole winter and throughout all of 2014 we were building and getting stronger and stronger, and now we've had the whole winter to maximize our car, and hopefully, you know, if the last test is an indication, hopefully we'll be pretty strong to start the season off.
Now, interaction amongst the drivers, team drivers. You've got guys like the rest of it come in. Do you have team meetings where you sort of compare notes and exchange ideas, or does everybody keep a little bit to themselves?
I think every driver keeps a little bit, a little bit in the bank, right? But it's again, I think we have a great team. I think on camaraderie, we probably have the best team out there. In terms of how we communicate away from the track. I mean, I think a big difference for me from previous years in preseason testing, at least, is a driver would do their duties, do their day and a half, 2 days, whatever they were testing, and then they would leave. You actually wouldn't hear from them until the next time you physically saw them. So now it's been great because at the last test in Oschersleben, I only had 1 day in the car. But then during the next 2 days, we have like a driver group chat, on our phones, and we're all communicating there, and we were just talking about what we changed, how it happened, and it's just been a very open atmosphere, and it's been, I think, really positive.
How do you find the series overall?
It's great. I mean, anytime you can get 80,000 people to the track on a Sunday to watch some cars go around, it's pretty remarkable, But as a driver, you don't really notice it until the driver's parade, basically before the race, and you think like, yeah, this is pretty cool, Get out the Snapchat, send your friends a picture, look how cool I am. But then, once the visor's down, once the helmet's on, you just kind of zone out and move forward. But DTM in Germany in particular is phenomenal. The amount of support that we get from the German fans, and because not only are the German fans passionate about motorsport, but also they're very passionate about and patriotic about their premium car brands. So you get a really big turnout for those, and it's a lot of fun. The DTM still wants to come to North America. They're just trying to get the manufacturers to do it. And the same thing like when they did the regulation partnership with Super GT in Japan, they were able to get the manufacturers behind it with Nissan, Honda, and Lexus. So I think all we need is some brands to commit over here. If General Motors could do it, if Ford could do it, then I don't know, Dodge, someone, just for as an example, and I think it would be fantastic. And then long term, they want to do a world championship. So, I mean, try to replace, I guess, the WTCC with what we're doing could potentially be very good.
There was a something put out last year talking about IndyCar, and the fact that no, we need to get Robbie back over here in IndyCar. Any thoughts on that?
You'd have to consider everything. I mean, I love IndyCar. I watch every race that I can, even though I'm in Europe. I do the time change and tune in online to cheer for Hinch because good friend of mine, and I know a bunch of people on the grid. So I'm intrigued about it. I like IndyCar. I'd be very open to driving an IndyCar, but I'm not going to leave DTM anytime soon. And otherwise, I'm not going to put aside a factory drive with Mercedes-Benz for a questionable 1-year drive in IndyCar, and the same goes for Formula One. I'm 26. I'm not getting any younger, and it's hard to turn down factory support and actually making money in motorsports instead of trying to find sponsors to scrounge together a 1-year deal, and then over that winter you're fighting like hell to get there the next year. I mean, at the end of the day, I've never been able to write a check, so my options were pretty limited. So, I was lucky through my whole junior categories having Red Bull behind me, paving the way for me to, prove myself and to get me to where I am today. I'm forever grateful for being a part of the Red Bull program for 5 years, because without them, I literally wouldn't have a motorsports career. So, but with that being said, every single time I go to Montreal for the Formula One race, I just think, I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like, I want to be here again, But then I go back to DTM and I think, like, no, I'm actually happy that I'm here. So
you're a driver collecting a check as opposed to a driver writing a check for what's considered, open wheel being a premier series, yet you still have to pay to be there. Is it the team that goes after the sponsorship? Because I notice there's different sponsors on every cars, or
yeah, they'll be like Mercedes brand sponsors. If it's either a business-to-business thing that they do, or if it's actual people that want to promote through DTM. So the driver doesn't really have any influence. We can bring our own sponsors if we want, but then they have to be referred through Mercedes, and then if it happens, if the deal goes, then the driver will get a cut of commission for bringing a sponsor to the team, and so there's always that. So I'm always open to finding sponsors, but it's not a career breaker if I don't bring anything. Well, most memorable race, to be honest, was last year when I had a win taken away from me.
Most memorable positive race.
Yeah, but no, I think my first professional win was a good one. It was just really difficult conditions. I think I started 8th in the race and was able to fight up into the lead, and it was a fun race. It was an exciting race. It wasn't just a parade where I led every lap start to finish.
And where was
I went
it?
through at Nürburgring. No, there's a lot. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have some success in motorsports, but I think at the end of the day, every win's great. I mean, also, I think my last win in Renault 3.5 in Barcelona, the race one, was very memorable because I was 2 points between me and Jean-Eric Verne for who was going to get the championship going into the weekend, and I started from pole and won the race by 28 seconds or something, and it was like just so much weight off my shoulders when I crossed the finish line, and it was just like probably one of the more perfect races I've driven as a driver. It was just like mistake-free, consistent, and it was just controlled the race, and it was I guess that was kind of like nail in the coffin a little bit for the championship, because I had 9 points, so all I had to do was finish within 6 points of him on the Sunday race to get the championship. So it was that was a good one. I was happy with myself, performing under pressure and all that stuff, and the critical moments, the clutch moments, to come through it with the win there, and in the fashion that I did it was really satisfying.
What did you think of the A1 GP series? Kind of a neat series.
It's honestly, the A1 GP series is still probably the most fun I've had as a driver. I mean, racing for your country is amazing, even though it's not really followed by the country. Just on the car, just seeing, on the classifications like Canada, it was cool to be a part of that. And also, when I first started driving for them, I was 18. And as an 18-year-old, going from Champ Car Atlantics, where I had 2 mechanics, an engineer and a data engineer between the 2 cars, to go to A1, where we had 10 mechanics, and it was a big world stage, traveling the world, at 18 years old, racing in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, China. It was amazing, and then I was talking to all my friends, and they were like first year university, and I was in New Zealand racing race cars, so it was that was a great moment in my life, and I would love the opportunity to do it again if the championship would start again.
Is you're here and you're there. Are you finding that you're splitting more time between the 2 places?
I would say definitely since I got my apartment in early this year, I've been spending a lot more time here in Canada. More, first purchase. I think I'm excited to, have my own place. I've always been renting in Europe, and then when I was home, staying with my parents. So, now that I have my own spot here, I'm really enjoying it.
Is there anything to say to the fans at home?
Wake up at 6 in the morning. No, but the Saturday races won't be that bad because we're doing a lot of twilight races. So they'll be on at about noon here. So basically, except for the first race is at 2. So like in Hockenheim, race 1's at 2 o'clock. But then from there onwards, because the TV channel that airs DTM also airs, like the match of the week for like German football, soccer. So what they're doing is they're airing us and then going straight to like the pregame for their, match of the week type on like the Saturday nights. So it's gonna be great for us for our TV, and then we get some twilight races out of it. So Saturday's gonna be a long day for us though. 9 a.m. practice, and then we qualify at around noon and race at 6.